Hey everybody, this is Chris C. from Houndsong Games. Let's do a planet painting tutorial. I got a couple of requests for this on social media when we did our last brush pack that was centered on doing this kind of thing, so let's do it. I'm using 8.5 by 11 canvas size just because it's a default that we've got set up for us, but you can use whatever size pleases you and works on your hardware. First thing we're going to do is set the background color to be, let's go with not quite black. Not quite. We want it to be pretty close, but not quite there. We need a color palette, don't we? Stand by. Jupiter's cool. Pinterest is always just the best for this. Oh, that's neat. Alright, yeah, let's go ahead and snag this guy. Download image. Boom, done. Now, could you just make up your own colors? Absolutely. No reason not to. But I think it's kind of cool and fun to use, to do this and kind of see what you get. Yeah, I can work with that. That's some cool stuff going on there. All right, neat. So we've got our background. Let's spice that up a little bit. I'm going to take one of these darker colors down here. I'm going to go to luminance. We're going to take that nebula brush. It's one of my favorites. And we're just going to kind of spice up the universe a little bit here. Just kind of scattering around different colors. Let's just pull a couple of other colors out of the same palette. Don't worry about it too much right now. Just trying to get some different tones in there. I'm going to erase, and I'm actually going to take a combination. I'm going to go to Elements Clouds. And we're just doing a very quick general thing here. This is not intended to be a masterpiece, but just to kind of show you how some of the tools we've been using work. That's interesting, but it looks really kind of fake and cheesy, doesn't it? But that's okay, because what we're going to do next is take, well, first of all, add a couple more elements to it. Luminance, I'm going to go to the light pen. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to crank up the spacing on it. Go to shape scatter. Nope, that's not the one I'm looking for. They changed this a little bit the last time. Hang on. Jitter, that's what I'm looking for. Jitter, and then count jitter. Turn that up a little bit. That'll work nicely. You can see I've done this a couple of different times. Pick a really light color and just kind of tap it. I'm not doing like big strokes like that. I'm just kind of tapping. Different pressures, different firmness to give me these nice little constellations throughout. But these aren't probably going to survive too much of this next step, but it will give us a little bit of fun. And actually, as a matter of fact, I'm going to take just a default bokeh lights. Bokeh. Do a little bit of this too, and you'll see why in a second. Okay, now I'm going to go to filters. We're going to do motion blur. I'm going to do it kind of in the same direction. Great, and then I'm going to do direction of where that kind of light band is. I'm also going to do a Gaussian blur. I actually want to change this to pencil mode and take just a big soft brush. And now you can actually paint in where the blur is more intense. I'm going to get kind of those back edges, and I'm going to use this to kind of just create some layers. Or create some depth, rather. I'm going to turn that way up. Make sure I don't have any weirdly hard edges. can also use the eraser to kind of take out some of that, because we're still in the filter right now. And what I'm doing is kind of creating these areas of variance where some areas are more or less blurred. That'll do for what we're doing. I'm going to do one more. Might as well just hit a little perspective blur dead in the middle there, because I think that's just a fun one to give it some zoom. I like the zoom. Okay. Now that looks kind of weird, Chris. Why'd you do all that? Well, most of it's going to be covered up anyway, so I'm not super worried about spending a ton of time on that. Let's pick one of these probably do like a mid-brown. And I'm going to go to, oh, I have so many new brushes and everything, I forget where I put them all. Drawing, I believe. Nope, I lied. Inking. Technical pen, that's the one I'm looking for. Okay, a new layer. And you know what, I'm going to go ahead and name these, because we will be putting this file up on our Patreon with all of its layers and all of its glory, so people can pick through it if they so choose and mess with it and do whatever they want. That's the background layer. Okay, great. So this is going to be base planet. Great. Draw a big old egg. Edit shape. Turn it into a circle, because that's the shape planets are. Kind of position it. I want it to be big enough where we can actually see what we're doing, just for the sake of this tutorial, even though it might not be how I actually did it in real life. But that's fine. Okay. So, and then I just drag down the, you can drag from the color swatch up there to fill into a region. All right, so now we've got our base planet. Gonna make another layer. Going to select, make sure you're in freehand to do that. Using that base planet as my selection mask, go to our new layer, which we will call Big Shadow. And just because I already know what's going to happen next, I'm going to put it into multiply mode and turn it down around half, and we'll see how that works. And we'll adjust accordingly. I'm going to take my darkest color from my palette and a big old soft brush. That is not the one I was looking for. There we go. Make it a real big brush. And what's interesting, if you look at, you know, images of planets from space or whatever, even though they're spherical, you get very little, like, you know, if you were shading a little sphere, you'd have a really round shadow. You generally don't get a lot of that, depending on what angle you're viewing it from. If you're seeing kind of the horizon, I'm sorry, not the horizon, the dawn line between night side and day side, it looks almost vertical, which just is weird to me, because I've done a lot of still lives and stuff, and that's not what you see at a small scale, but it is what you see at kind of a big one. So we're going to do maybe a little bit more than half. This planet's getting sun, getting light from some source down towards the bottom there, but not towards the back. Now that's obviously not dark enough, so the nice thing about this multiply layer is we can turn it way up. And what I'm actually going to do is duplicate that layer. Boom. Turn it down a bit. I'm going to erase out a little bit more. So I get my darkest, not quite at the back. I am going to give it a little bit of rim light around the edge there. And you can paint back in. I'm still using that same color, so I can just go back and forth as much as I want. Gonna give me this core shadow there. Done. Sweet. Okay. So now we've got our shadows. We'll go ahead and group those. What do I name this? Shadows? I'm a terrible professional. I don't often name all of my layers properly, because usually I don't expect people to go through my files. I'm adjusting. Okay, still have that planet selected. We're going to make a new layer, and we're just going to call this Textures. And to start with, let's go ahead, we'll pick a darker color. And notice this layer is in between my base planet and below my shadows. That's what I want. I'm going to try and stick to Procreate's default stuff here so people aren't like, you know, I don't have that brush and yada, yada, yada. We'll take Wasteland. Wasteland's a cool one. We're just going to give the planet a little bit of, apparently I lost my selection there. Trying this again. Not sure how I did that, but it's probably very obvious in the recording. I just missed it. It is a little bit of a brain weirdness to try and talk and paint at the same time to an empty wall, which is what it is from my perspective. Darker color, same brush. I can zoom in some too. Sometimes I like to work at a pretty zoomed out state just to really get the impression that the piece is leaving. Take a lighter color, still same brush. Oop, no, that's way too much. I want a really light hand on this. Great. Now we're going to use some of my actual other favorite brushes are in organic. Let's grab clay. Let's do some weird colors. Just big brush, big clay brush to give it some tone, give it some variation. I'm not really pushing hard like that, but I'm just kind of putting some patches of different color material into that planet. And let's go, that worked pretty well. You know what, let's do one more color in that. And maybe there's a bunch of like copper formations or weird mineral deposits. Ooh, you know what, that gave it a lot, but I don't hate it. Or there's a lot of like small lakes or methane deposits or something on this planet, I don't know. Mountain ash is another good one. And I'm actually going to, I don't want to do this. I'm going to go back to my second big shadow layer for this one. You know what? No, I'm going to make a new layer. But it is also going to be a shadow layer. You'll see why I want to make it a new layer in a minute. All right. So this one is really cool for, you know, cracks and divots and everything. But you'll see it's very vertical right now, which looks weird, so we'll fix that. That's why I made it its own separate layer. Spires works really well with this one as well. Give it a little bit of both. They look like there's some mountain ranges and stuff in there. Okay. Now we're going to take the liquefy tool on that layer. I hit expand. Make a big brush. And just kind of bulge it out in the middle. I'm going to take a pinch and do it around the edges. Hit twirl, left or right, doesn't matter, it's up to you. And the key with this is to just kind of be selective about it. You don't want it to look too super artificial. But you want to give it some variation. And nice thing with having these shadows in there is you can kind of just blend them in and out. I can take an edge, turn the size down a little bit, and just run. I like to run the edge right around the rim of the planet. And really deform that a little bit. You know what? I think that's good for now. We're going to put that layer into multiply as well. Turn it down. Keep it high though, around 80. I think is good. And we're also going to do a little trick. We're going to take that, we're going to duplicate it. We're going to set it to a different, well, actually just normal will work fine. We're going to use that as a selection. Let's see if this works. Sometimes this is a little bit tricky. Pick kind of a medium tone and just take a big soft brush again. It looks a little weird right now, but we'll get to it. Hold on. All right, I'm going to deselect everything. I'm going to move that layer just the barest hint towards the sunlight. I'm going to select the dark version of that, and then use that selection to clear that top layer. Ooh, look at that. We do want to put that one under our shadows. Man, that's looking kind of cool, isn't it? All right. We're also going to take the selection of the just big circle, invert it, and do another clear on that, since it does go outside of the basic circle of the planet. We don't want to do that because it looks weird. All right, so that's looking pretty sweet. I'm happy with how that's going right now. Yeah. And we haven't even used any of our fancy brushes yet. We're getting to that in just a second. So, now what? You can decide if there's an atmosphere or not, but there will definitely be some highlighting on the planet. So let's select our big circle again. We'll go here. Oh, here. I should name these. My bad, I get carried away. Mountain highs. And this will be... Nope. Come on. Mountain shadows, there we go. Neat. All right, I don't think we have to mess with shadows too much for a few minutes. Oh, excuse me. It is late here, I apologize. All right, we're going to do some highlights. This will be atmosphere. This is where you got to make up your own new handwriting. In order for the darn Apple thing to pick up on it. Okay, all right. Gonna reselect our circle because I do want to feather it a little bit. I've decided as I was fiddling with that I do want it to have just a thin atmosphere. I'm gonna feather that to about 10%. Go to our atmosphere layer. Gonna pick one of our lighter colors. Soft brush. Big one. And I'm just going to kind of paint that leading edge. Now you can already tell that my layer is not in the right order. So that needs to be over top of those mountain shadows. We're actually going to move those down. And I want that to be kind of actually over the horizon. Great. I'm going to change that to... Add tends to work okay. Well, actually, we're gonna build this up a little bit. So here's what we'll do. Because that is way too harsh. I'm gonna erase out a lot of it. That's looking better. Because we just want to give it some haze, you know. All right, duplicate that layer. Boom. I'm going to change the one on top to an add layer, which is going to give us this crazy highlight. And we're going to erase a lot of that until it's just kind of like giving us this. You can see how much I took out of that layer there. And we can turn that down to our heart's content, but I do want it to have a little bit of bloom on it. So there we go. That's getting somewhere. Let's go ahead and select that base layer again. For the last little touch of atmosphere, let's actually feather that some more. New layer, same color, gonna dump that in there, and then erase out most of it. Deselect that. And this one, I think, actually maybe needs to be on top. Just keep it in normal, that's fine. Oh, you know what? We'll do it this way. We'll just Gaussian. Blur it out a little more. Increase the size of it a little bit because I want it to be beyond the edges of the actual planet. There we go. And it will still be less visible in the back. I just want it to be showing like the light is wrapping around, you know, the world. There, that's pretty cool. Okay. Super. All right, so we've got that. I'm going to rename that into haze. Great. Now let's do some of our real fancy brushes. I'm going to do details. Apparently we're caps locked now. Fine. It's all good. So for this, I'm actually using a brush set that we now have. It went up for sale on our Ko-fi coffee page a little while ago. It's supporting our science fiction project that we're working on called Sea of Cinders. This brush set in its entirety is $1, or pay what you want. You know, we obviously will appreciate tips. But we use it for exactly this. So what you can see I'm doing right now is just painting a really big layer on top of everything. And these were made by me out of kind of satellite images that I got of different parts of the real world. I think this is actually Egypt right here. You can kind of see the pyramids. That's neat. And I'm just using this to give some visual interest, and we will conform this to the planet in just a moment. Using a lot of those grays. This is going to be a really built-up planet. And I use them just like this. I think part of this is like Chicago, and like one of these is from Los Angeles? Maybe Bangkok? I'm not sure. I picked a bunch of fun cities, some of which I'd been to, some of which I hadn't. Farmland. Anyways, but this whole set is available on our Ko-fi page for $1, or pay what you want, or it is available to anyone who is a patron of ours on Patreon for Houndsong games at any level. We very much appreciate your support, and it is very important to us and useful to us for the sake of getting Sea of Cinders done, which is our main first big project. We are making a science fiction expansion book for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going for it. We want this. You know, we're working professional humans who have been around for a while, and we are. It's a big one. We're setting a lot of really high bars. This is not going to be like a 20-page PDF on DM's Guild or something. This is going to be probably several hundred pages, high-quality artwork, both from me, from my business partner, and we're commissioning other people to chip in, some of whom we're very excited to work with, who I've admired for a long time. Yeah, tanks, mechs, aliens, you know, play as aliens, be aliens, fight aliens, new races, new classes, new subclasses for every single core class. It's a really big project, but it's a lot of fun. Anyways, that's my pitch. Back to it. You can see I've used that brush set, the no luminance half of it, to make this kind of crazy mosaic. And now what I'm going to do is transform it to kind of morph to the planet. I'm going to use the distort function first to kind of give it some perspective. It actually looks pretty good. And then you can either use the warp version to give it some curvature, which works okay. It works fine for what it is. It doesn't give you a ton of control. I do still like to use the liquify tool to kind of push stuff around on a more precise basis. Use that edge tool to kind of really bring it in down there. Great. All right, so sometimes it's better to do that under those. Sometimes it's better not to. Oh, you know what? I do like that. But I do want some of the other stuff too, so let's go ahead and we'll do both, because I don't have to pick. All right, so I'm going to take just a textured eraser brush, and I've duplicated that layer to be below the mountains, because I liked the general idea of like there's all these towns and cities and structures kind of in these valleys and everything. But I do want some to be more prominent and stick out more, so I'm going to take just a textured brush, and on the uppermost layer of that, I'm going to erase out some of the sections, but not all of it. So there's some areas that look more built up, and there's some areas that look, you know, more finicky and tiny. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. I'm going to do a quick experiment here. I'm going to put another one on top, and just sometimes when I'm doing this stuff, I like to just cycle through the different blending modes and see what it gives me. I don't have anything particularly in mind, and this might just be a failed experiment. Sometimes that's not bad. Just put multiply. Sometimes, depending on the color combinations and everything, it can do some cool stuff. Like that is interesting. Okay, color dodge, remember that. Add isn't bad. That rhymed. Completely on accident. Now see, that gets weird. Some of them don't work so well. Oh, also, I've noticed that we have a little bit poking over the horizon. That's okay, we'll fix that. That's neat, but not what I'm looking for. Let's go back to color dodge. That is actually working pretty well for me. And you can see how those layers are, they're the same layer on both on top and on bottom of those mountains, but one's in color dodge mode on top. So if I take away the bottom one, it doesn't look quite the same. And if I take away the top one, it's more muted, which is not a bad thing. That's that big layer on top of everything. I like that. So that's cool, but we are going to erase out just a little bit. Just going to use that rust brush again. So now we've actually got that layer 3 times. We've got here our base layer that is underneath everything, underneath our mountains, our pop layer that is on top in color dodge mode, and another normal layer on top of that that is on top of everything. Okay, I was trying to see if another blending mode would also give us some more cool stuff, but I think we're going to leave it there. Let me go ahead, airbrush, and fix this little problem down here before it drives me crazy. There we go. That's pretty sweet. Okay. Next, we're going to do basically the same thing on top using our luminance brushes. So these, again, are brushes that we made out of actual satellite images. I'm going to pick something with some tonality to it, and I'm basically going to do the same thing. Now, you want to be a little selective with these, because if I just smear it, it looks really dumb. But usually layer it a couple of times. Put one on top of the other, that kind of thing. Pretty sure that's Bangkok. Oh, I don't remember. All right, that honestly is probably going to work okay. tab. I apologize. Same brush. I just organized it in their own tab once I was done making them. But just so people can follow along more easily, and I'm actually using the same brushes as an eraser to kind of break up those edges a little bit more. Okay, we're going to do the same thing we did before. I'm going to distort this, and obviously put these more on the dark side of the planet. Give them a little bit of curvature. That's honestly not bad. So we're going to take some of that out. I just don't want them to look like huge squares, you know, although, you know, that could be your thing. We're going to add another layer on top of that, and using the same color, going to use some of our smaller detail brushes, and we'll zoom in a little bit for this. But these make for good, you know, highways and city centers, and you can just kind of let your artistic imagination, your inner city planner go wild. Play city skylines enough, you know. I like to, you know, if I'm being very sci-fi, I like to do these big rings. Like it's a very planned city someone made. You can also, I should have mentioned, you know, I think I was using this color right here, but you can also switch up the tonality a little bit. Some different hues. It's good to mix in. Like not everyone's got LEDs yet, you know. Yeah, that's fine. Back to our big crazy, whoop. Let's use our crunchy one. And these just have their light pens with different kind of distortion layers on them. You know, who knows what's happening out here? Some sort of agricultural or spaceport, or who knows? Obviously, some of these big lines would wrap to other parts of the world. But you wouldn't be able to see the light as it gets into the light. Let me find airbrush. This is good for, you know, some sort of crazy grid built in. Maybe there's like a solar farm out here or something, I don't know. Just kind of adding interest at various places, adding little details for your eye to pick up on. Really give that impression that there's something crazy going on down here. I really like this City Blocks brush. This worked out really well. So what you can do is use it to really beef up some of these lines that you see within those bigger brushes. And you don't have to be super precise about it or anything. You know, I'm just kind of doing what seems right. You know, it'd be cool. One of these big rings just on the edge of the dawn there. Yeah, let's do that. There's two overlapping. There's a junction there. That probably spawned a town. Has this little turned into a big city. Like an airport there or something. I don't know. And then, of course, since that's, you know, halfway into dawn, some of the lights would be off. And it's really kind of up to you how insanely detailed you want to go with stuff. Just dotting some smaller settlements around in other places. Really give the impression this is like a fully explored and developed rock. And then let's wrap up our background a little bit. We already did some crazy stuff with it. I'm going to go back and use my little scatter star brush. A couple different sizes. Easy. And then I like to do a little bit of vignetting on top of everything. It's a artsy term. What's a good default brush to use? I have some quick tool brushes that I use for that, but like I said, trying to avoid that. So let's go ahead and do... You know what? Some of the organic ones should work okay. Let's do cotton. Why not? I don't know. Pick a dark color. Make it real big. New layer. Do a couple of dark colors in here. Like a lighter layer in there, like there's some stuff going on, and then go back to the dark on top of it. So just a little bit of that pokes through. And then we're going to use, let's try a perspective blur. We'll stick it right on the planet. How about that? Yeah. It's fun, you can kind of move this one around. I always enjoy that. Again, I'm going to just real quick run through. Nope, I'm not seeing anything in there that I'm really excited about, so we'll just leave it normal. There's that, and we'll do kind of the opposite on our top layer. We'll take that light tone, and we'll do an airbrush for this one. This is why I did it. I want to give that planetary shadow, like it's casting a shadow into some dust. And it also really helps ground that planet. If that doesn't make any sense in a space context, but it's an art term. It helps ground it in the scene in terms of, like, since it and the scene are being affected by this light together, it makes it look like it's part of it instead of just like this ball that I drew. And I'm going to erase it kind of out so it's not affecting that vignette too much. Let's go ahead. Usually I put these into screen, although I don't know if it's going to make too much of a difference. Let's look. Normal, screen, very little difference. You can see if I put in an ad, everything goes crazy. Actually, it's kind of fun. All right, here's what we'll do. Put that in normal. We're going to turn the opacity down some. We're going to duplicate it. We're going to put it into add. Everything goes wild. We're going to erase out. This is starting to feel familiar. A lot of it. But still leave some of those places where it goes really nuts. And then, just because I think it'd be fun, let's actually put it back in, but just for a second. Take a smaller eraser and add some God rays, even though they don't make really any sense in this context, but it'd be cool. Sometimes it doesn't have to be physically sensible. And then I'm just going to Gaussian blur that just a smidge, just to really kind of give those something to do. Oop, did not want that at full throttle. I'm just trying to find about 37%. There you go. Anyways, I think it's time to put a pin in that. Oh, no, nope, I forgot one thing. This is critical. Critical thing. Gonna go back to our planet brush set. I'm gonna take the crunchy brush. Gonna pick, we'll go with like a nice desaturated blue. There you go. Make it kind of small. Nope, smaller. I'm going to go to the luminance. Let's pick the standard light pen. I'm going to take a smudge brush. These are all custom brushes or things that I bought, so we'll go to our airbrush. Smudge out the tail. Because you've got to have a spaceship every time. Doesn't make a difference. It's already pretty tweaked out. Actually, some of those are bringing out that trail real nice, though. Sure, hard light. Why not? Taking one of those scatter brushes that we made. There. All right, I think we'll call it there. I hope you found this informative and enjoyable. For that brush pack, again, please either support us on Patreon or spend $1 on our coffee shop. Happy to share it, and definitely make sure to tag us on social media at Sea of Cinders RPG on Twitter and Instagram. Well, all the links will be in the doobly-doo down below. But you know, if you make anything cool with it, we definitely want to see it. One more time, we are making science fiction source book for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. We are Houndsong Games, and that was fun. Have a good night.